people to Jesus. Well, ministers and missionaries and all of them, they have to keep wrestling with things, and they want to write books and things like that, right? So McGavran continued to wrestle with this, and he came up with this idea. It's called the homogeneous unit principle. You have to say it. Homogeneous? Unit principle. And it was a huge deep dive and a huge change within the church. But you know how when you come up with an idea and it's about a specific thing and then it begins to morph into something else, right? So in the United States, as people began to learn from McGavran, what they came up with the homogeneous unit principle, meant that to grow our churches, we need to form churches where everyone looks, thinks, and acts exactly the same. And by doing so, we can create really, really big churches. And you know what? They were right. Do you ever wonder why you drive around the country and there are 5 churches in every single suburb in the United States that worship in a warehouse, that sing the same exact songs, that have people who go to school together, work together, have the same exact income, have the same exact education background? It's because of this right here. People took that idea, continued to morph it, and said the only way we can grow a church is by getting people who are in the same exact demographic together. And that, combined with our consumer culture, meant that the vast majorities of churches in the United States look like a Walmart and have a McDonald's idea. Have it your way. Now, clearly, we're not a church in the suburbs that worships in the warehouse, but we are all swimming in this, even if we don't know it. This has had an effect on us, even when we aren't aware of it. And we all have individual beliefs, but we never believe individually. We are always in community. We are never alone in our faith. And as I ask myself, why do I not pray the same prayers that Paul prays? I realize that Paul is exhibiting for us a spiritual maturity that I did not have. Paul is inviting the Thessalonians to grow in their faith, to mature in their faith, and the only way they can do that is in community with the people that they don't actually always get along with. Paul commended their faith, but Paul knew that the Thessalonians lacked something as they were trying to follow Jesus. He knew that they needed to grow and grow in their love for one another. So Paul invites the Thessalonians into this spiritual maturity. And 2,000 years later, as we read these words, Paul invites us into spiritual maturity. We all need to grow in our faith. We all need to continue to develop what we believe and how we live that out. We too need to grow in love for one another with the people in this room right now and everyone else. There are people in this room you need to grow in love with. There are people out of this room that you need to grow in love with. And I realized that many of the churches today, into this world in which we're all swimming and living in, are also spiritually immature. Most churches in the U.S. today are in what I would say like a spiritual adolescence. Remember back to adolescence? It's not good nor bad or whatever, but like you want to be famous and go viral when you're 16, right? And then when you're like 46, you want to sit on the porch and not say anything, right? That is maturity, right? It doesn't mean when you're 16 that it's terrible or wrong or whatever. It just means that you grew in your understanding of how things work and you long for different things. And that is also wisdom. Learning what actually matters in life. And in our spiritual adolescence, in our churches that are spiritually immature, we pray for numerical growth, we pray for excellent worship, we pray for entertaining things for young people, and we don't actually grow in love for one another. Whether you realize it or not, there's someone in this room that you have acted out of spite towards, directly or indirectly. And this morning, I confess to you my own participation in this as a church leader, of praying the wrong things for my church. Which is why we're going to start praying to grow in love for one another. Because if we commit to this journey of spiritual maturity, if we pray that we will grow in love for one another and let God do that work, we will quickly find, I believe, plenty of growth